The first stand. The alien kid's skull cracked against the metal floor as the Zorgon bullies shoved him down again, his books scattering. Will Porter clenched his fists as he watched the cruel scene play out in the busy Galactic Academy hallway. Hundreds of tentacles, scaled, and furry alien students streamed past, averting their eyes from the blatant bullying. But 16-year-old Will was human, and humans didn't tolerate this. It was just another day of the prestigious interstellar school on Epsilon Prime space station. Shy Arcturian student Pryor sat slumped against the wall now as the massive Zorgon towered over him, mocking his accent. Their leader Girk kicked Pryor's fallen books, sending them skidding across the floor. No one intervened. No one dared cross the Zorgon, the most aggressively dominant species at the Academy. Their bullying ran rampant, ignored by students and faculty alike. But humans were different. Humans defended the downtrodden, and when Will Porter locked eyes with a bruised, pleading Pryor, he knew he had to act, even if it meant making an enemy of Girk and his gang, even if it meant risking his own neck to stand up for what was right. Will shoved his way through the indifferent crowd. There was no going back now. This ended today. Will's heart raced as he stepped between Pryor and the Zorgon bullies. Girk's eyes narrowed, his scaly face twisted into a sneer. "Stay out of this, human," Girk growled. "Unless you want a beating too." Will stood his ground, fists clenched at his sides. "Leave him alone, Girk. Pick on someone your own size." Girk let out a harsh, barking laugh. "Like you, runt." The Zorgon threw a meaty fist at Will's face, expecting to lay him out cold with one blow. But Will was ready. He ducked underneath Girk's wild swing and pivoted, driving a kick hard into the bully's gut. Girk stumbled back, clutching his stomach, eyes wide with shock and rage. The other Zorgons froze, stunned to see their leader staggered. Will didn't waste the momentary advantage. "Pryor, run." He hauled the Arcturian boy to his feet and shoved him forward. Pryor stumbled, then broke into a sprint down the hallway. Will was right on his heels as angry Zorgon shouts erupted behind them. Alien students scattered as Will and Pryor charged past, the furious Zorgon gang thundering after them. Will's lungs burned as he ran, dodging around startled clusters of tentacled Highlands and furry Bulans. "Help!" Pryor cried out as they passed an open classroom door. Inside, a dozen Arcturian students watched with wide eyes. "Please help us." One of the Arcturians started forward, but another grabbed his arm, holding him back. The door slammed shut. Just like that, Pryor's own kind turned their backs. Will's heart sank even as his anger surged. "This way." Will spotted a narrow maintenance corridor and veered toward it, Pryor close behind. They squeezed inside just as Girk and his goons thundered past, shouting threats. In the dimness of the corridor, the two boys slumped against the wall, chests heaving as they caught their breath. Pryor's face was bruised, his small frame shaking. Will put a hand on his shoulder. "Hey, you're going to be okay, Pryor. I won't let them hurt you anymore." "You don't understand," Pryor said miserably, his voice quivering. "The Zorgon, they've been targeting me for weeks. No one ever tries to stop them, not even my own people." Will frowned. "What do you mean? Why wouldn't the Arcturians help you?" Pryor shook his head. "Arcturians avoid conflict. We always seek peace with other races, even if it means sacrificing our own. That's why no one intervenes with the Zorgons. They don't want to make waves." Will stared at him, appalled. Maintaining galactic peace was one thing, but turning a blind eye while one of your own was abused and harassed was unacceptable. "That's messed up," Will said flatly. "You deserve to feel safe, Pryor, and if the Arcturians won't step up, then I will. I promise we're going to put a stop to Girk and his goons, one way or another." Pryor looked up at him, eyes shining with unshed tears and tentative hope. "You mean it? You'll help me stand up to them?" "Dan right I will," Will said fiercely. "Whatever it takes. That's what humans do. We defend the defenseless. And as of now, you're under my protection. The Arcturian boy managed a small, grateful smile. For the first time in weeks, he felt a flicker of real hope. With Will the human on his side, maybe he could finally fight back against his tormentors. Rallying allies. Will and Pryor emerged from the maintenance corridor, hearts still racing from their narrow escape. The Zorgan angry shouts had faded behind them as they made their way into the bustling central atrium of Galactic Academy. Alien students of countless species milled about, chatting and studying at the scattered tables and benches. Will scanned the crowd, hoping to spot a friendly face. His eyes landed on a cluster of human students gathered around a holo table, engrossed in animated discussion. He recognized a few of his classmates: Max, the whiz kid engineer; Ethan, the charismatic debate team captain; and Lena, the star athlete. "Come on," Will said to Pryor, putting a reassuring hand on the Arcturian boy's shoulder. "Let's go talk to my friends. They'll help us figure this out." As they approached the table, Ethan glanced up and grinned. "Hey, Will. What's up, man?" His smile faltered as he noticed Pryor's bruised face and Will's grim expression. "Whoa, what happened to you guys?" "Girk and his goons," Will said, anger simmering in his voice. "They were beating up on Pryor here. We barely got away." Lena's eyes flashed with outrage. "Those Zorgan jerks. Not again. They can't keep getting away with this bullying." Will nodded. "Apparently, it's been going on for weeks. Pryor's own people won't even help him because they're so scared of pissing off the Zorgan." "That's messed up," Max said, shaking his head. "We've got to do something about this." Ethan leaned forward, his brow furrowed in thought. "Okay, let's think. We need evidence of the Zorgan's shitty behavior if we're going to make a case to the administration." Max perked up. "I could try hacking into the school's security cams. If we can get footage of Girk and his crew harassing people, they won't be able to deny it." Lena grinned fiercely. "Now we're talking. And once we have proof, we organize a protest. Get the whole school involved. Let everyone see what the Zorgan have been up to. The faculty will have to take action then." As the group threw out ideas, Will noticed a tentative tap on his shoulder. He turned to see a meek-looking Kelpian student hovering nearby, his fin-like ears drooping anxiously. "Excuse me," the Kelpian said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I couldn't help overhearing. I'm Varu. The Zorgan have been bullying me too. I want to help." Pryor's eyes widened. "Really? You'd speak out against them?" Varu nodded, straightening his posture. "I'm tired of being afraid. If you're going to expose them, I can try to get other victims to come forward too. There's power in numbers, right?" Will clapped Varu on the back, a grin spreading across his face. "Hell yeah, man. Welcome aboard. The more people we have on our side, the better our chances." As Varu joined the group at the table, the gears in Will's head started turning. With Max's tech skills, Lena's influence, Ethan's leadership, and the testimonies of multiple bullying victims, they might actually have a shot at this. "All right, guys," Will said, leaning in conspiratorially. "Let's go over the plan one more time. Max, you work on getting that security footage. Ethan, Lena, start spreading the word about the protest. Varu, Pryor, see how many other students you can get to come forward about the Zorgan bullying. We'll reconvene tomorrow to put all the pieces together." The group nodded solemnly, determination and righteous anger burning in their eyes. Will felt a swell of hope in his chest. They came from all corners of the galaxy, from vastly different cultures and backgrounds, but in this moment, they were united. Together, they'd take on the bullies and fight for a better galactic academy, one where every student could feel safe and valued, regardless of their species. It wouldn't be easy, but with his new allies by his side, Will knew they could make a real difference. The game was on. The Zorgan's reign of terror ended now. The protest. Will's heart raced as he watched the holo screen flicker to life, the damning footage of Girk and his goons tormenting Pryor playing out in vivid detail. Max had come through, hacking into the school's surveillance system and compiling a montage of the Zorgon's worst offenses. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd of protesters gathered in the atrium, a sea of outraged faces from a dozen different species. "This has to stop," Ethan declared, his voice ringing out over the din. "We can't let the Zorgon keep terrorizing our fellow students. It's time for the administration to take action." Cheers erupted from the protesters, signs waving in the air. "End the bullying now. Expel the Zorgon. Justice for Pryor." Will stood at the front of the crowd, Pryor at his side. The Arcturian boy's bruises had faded, but the haunted look in his eyes remained. Varu and a handful of other bullying victims flanked them, their presence a testament to the pervasive nature of the problem. As the chants grew louder, a hush suddenly fell over the atrium. Will turned to see Girk and his Zorgon crew pushing their way through the crowd, their faces twisted with rage. "You just couldn't leave it alone, could you, human?" Girk snarled, jabbing a finger at Will. "You think you can embarrass us like this? You'll pay for this." Will stood his ground, even as fear coiled in his gut. "It's over, Girk. Everyone knows what you've done. You can't hide anymore." Girk let out a roar of fury and lunged forward, his fists raised. Will braced himself for the impact, but it never came. Instead, a sickening crack echoed through the atrium as Girk's blow connected with Pryor's skull. The Arcturian boy crumpled to the ground, blood pooling beneath his head. Pryor Will dropped to his knees beside his friend, cradling his limp form. Rage and anguish surged through him, hot tears stinging his eyes. He looked up at Girk, hatred etched into every line of his face. "You monster." Will launched himself at the Zorgon, all thoughts of peace forgotten. He pummeled Girk with a flurry of punches, pouring all his grief and anger into each blow. Around them, chaos erupted as the protesters surged forward, grappling with the other Zorgon. Shouts and cries filled the air, the once peaceful demonstration devolving into a brawl. "Enough." A booming voice cut through the mayhem. Will looked up to see the school's security personnel flooding into the atrium, stunned batons at the ready. They quickly subdued the Zorgon, snapping restraints around their wrists. Medics rushed to Pryor's side, carefully loading him onto a stretcher. Will watched helplessly as they carried his friend away, the weight of his failure crushing his chest. In the days that followed, the administration launched a full investigation into the bullying incidents. Girk and his gang were expelled, their academic records permanently marred. New anti-bullying policies were put into place, promising harsher punishments for future offenders. But for Will, it was little comfort. He sat at Pryor's bedside in the medical bay, watching the steady rise and fall of his friend's chest. The doctors said the damage was severe, that Pryor would need to return to his home planet for extensive treatment. "I'm so sorry," Will whispered, his voice choked with emotion. "I should have done more. I should have stopped them sooner." Pryor's eyes fluttered open, a weak smile tugging at his lips. "You did everything you could, Will. You stood up for me when no one else would. That means more than you know." Will squeezed Pryor's hand, a lump forming in his throat. "I won't let this happen to anyone else. I promise." And he meant it. In the weeks that followed, Will threw himself into advocacy work, starting a support group for bullied students and working with the administration to create a more inclusive environment. He spoke out against discrimination at every opportunity, urging his fellow students to stand up for one another. But even as positive changes swept through the academy, Will couldn't shake the guilt that gnawed at him. He replayed that fateful day in the atrium over and over in his mind, wondering what he could have done differently. He thought of Pryor, bravely enduring painful rehab on a distant planet. He thought of all the other victims who had suffered in silence, too afraid to speak out. Will clenched his fists, a fierce determination burning in his eyes. He would keep fighting, no matter what. For Pryor, for Varu, for every student who had ever felt powerless in the face of cruelty. This was only the beginning. Will would make sure of it. A new beginning. Will's heart sank as he read the message from Pryor, his eyes welling up with tears. The words on the screen blurred together, but the painful truth was clear. Pryor's injuries were permanent, and he wouldn't be coming back to Galactic Academy. Even worse, the trauma of the bullying had left him struggling with crippling anxiety and depression. Pryor, Will whispered, his voice cracking. He slumped back in his chair, running a hand through his hair. After everything they'd been through, after all the progress they'd made, it wasn't enough. He hadn't been able to protect his friend when it mattered most. He thought of Pryor alone and suffering on his home planet. The image was too much to bear. Will knew what he had to do. He marched into the dean's office, his jaw set with determination. "I need to take a leave of absence," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Pryor needs me. I have to be there for him." The dean, a wise old Vulcan with understanding eyes, simply nodded. "Of course, Mr. Porter. Take the time you need. We'll ensure your studies are not adversely affected." Will blinked, surprised by the easy acquiescence. He'd expected more resistance. "Thank you, sir. I appreciate it." He turned to leave, but the dean's voice stopped him. "Mr. Porter, what you're doing for your friend is admirable. You embody the best of what Galactic Academy stands for." Will managed a small smile, his throat tight with emotion. "I'm just trying to do what's right, sir." He packed his bags in a daze, his mind already light years away on Arcturia. He sent a quick message to his classmates, letting them know he'd be gone for a while. Their responses were immediate and supportive, filled with promises to hold down the fort in his absence. The journey to Pryor's home planet was a blur. Will barely registered the wonders of interstellar travel, his thoughts consumed with worry for his friend. When he finally arrived at Pryor's home, he was shocked by what he found. The once vibrant Arcturian boy was a shell of his former self, confined to a hover chair and dependent on a dizzying array of medical devices. His family, their faces lined with exhaustion and worry, welcomed Will with tired smiles. "Thank you for coming," Pryor's mother said, her voice thick with emotion. "It means so much to Pryor to have you here." Will swallowed hard, his eyes stinging. "I'm so sorry," he said. "I should have done more. I should have stopped this from happening." Pryor's father shook his head. "You did everything you could, Will. None of this is your fault." But as Will learned more about Pryor's situation, his guilt only grew. The costs of Pryor's medical treatment were astronomical, and his family was drowning in debt. The Arcturian government, despite being fully aware of the circumstances, had offered little in the way of support or resources. Will felt a surge of anger and frustration. How could they abandon one of their own like this? After everything Pryor had been through, didn't he deserve better? He knew he couldn't stand by and do nothing. Not again. He fired off a series of messages to his friends back at Galactic Academy, pouring out the details of Pryor's plight. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within hours, Max had set up a secure fundraising platform, and Lena was rallying the athletic teams to donate. Ethan was penning impassioned speeches, urging the student body to come together for one of their own. Varu, his voice shaking with emotion, recorded a powerful video testimony about his own experiences with bullying and the importance of supporting victims. The video went viral, spreading across the galaxy like wildfire. As the fundraiser gained traction, Will felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they could make a real difference for Pryor and his family. But it wasn't just about the money. The galactic media picked up on the story, and suddenly Will and Pryor were at the center of a much larger conversation. Pundits and politicians were debating the issues of bullying, discrimination, and the need for greater interspecies cooperation. Will found himself thrust into the spotlight, invited to speak at conferences and events across the galaxy. He was hailed as a champion for the downtrodden, a voice for those who had been silenced by fear and prejudice. It was overwhelming, and at times, Will felt like an imposter. Who was he to be speaking on behalf of so many? But then he'd look at Pryor, see the glimmer of pride and hope in his friend's eyes, and he knew he had to keep going. Despite the outpouring of support, Pryor's recovery was a long and grueling process. There were good days and bad days, moments of progress and setbacks. Will felt torn between his responsibilities at Galactic Academy and his desire to be there for his friend. In the end, the choice was clear. He applied to transfer to a school on Arcturia, determined to see Pryor through this journey. It meant leaving behind everything he'd known, but Will knew it was the right thing to do. The long road to recovery. On a warm Arcturian evening, Will and Pryor found themselves sitting side by side, watching the sun dip below the horizon. They were both changed, marked by the scars of their experiences. But there was a quiet strength between them now. "We've still got a long way to go," Pryor said softly, his hand resting on the controls of his hover chair. "But with you here, I feel like maybe we can do this." Will reached out, gripping his friend's shoulder. "We're in this together, Pryor, no matter what, and we're not alone anymore." They sat in comfortable silence, the weight of their shared history settling around them like a blanket. In the distance, the first stars were beginning to appear, tiny pinpricks of light against the darkening sky. "I've been thinking," Will said eventually, his voice thoughtful, "about everything that's happened and everything that's still to come, and I have an idea." Pryor turned to him, his eyebrows raised in question. "What kind of idea?" "An organization," Will said, his eyes sparkling with excitement. "A network of support for people like us, for anyone who's ever been bullied or discriminated against. A way to promote understanding and empathy across species, to make sure no one ever has to feel alone again." Pryor's face broke into a wide grin, the first real smile Will had seen from him in months. "That's brilliant, Will. Let's do it. Let's make it happen." And there, under the Arcturian stars, the seeds of something new and hopeful were planted. Will and Pryor knew their fight was far from over, but now they had a purpose, a mission. Together, with the help of their friends and allies, they would work to create a galaxy where no one would have to suffer as they had. It was a daunting task, but as Will looked at Pryor, he felt a surge of determination. They had each other, and they had a growing network of support. They would face the challenges ahead the same way they'd faced everything else. Together, one step at a time. The sun dipped below the horizon, and the stars shone brighter, a celestial reminder of the vast and wondrous galaxy they were a part of. Will and Pryor sat in the gathering darkness, their voices low and earnest as they discussed plans and possibilities. They were two small beings in an infinite universe, but in that moment, they felt anything but insignificant. They were survivors, fighters, dreamers. They were the spark of change, the hope for a better tomorrow. And they were just getting started, building a movement. The days following their decision were a whirlwind of activity. Will and Pryor worked tirelessly to bring their vision to life, drawing on the support and expertise of their friends from Galactic Academy. Max's tech skills proved invaluable as he helped design a secure and user-friendly platform for their new organization. Lena's athletic connections brought in a wave of support from sports teams across the galaxy, while Ethan's persuasive speeches rallied countless students and activists to their cause. They named their organization Galactic Unity, a symbol of their commitment to fostering understanding and empathy among all species. Their mission was simple yet profound: to create a network of support for victims of bullying and discrimination, to promote interspecies cooperation, and to advocate for a more inclusive and compassionate galaxy. Word of Galactic Unity spread quickly, thanks in no small part to the viral video testimonies from Varu and other victims. Donations poured in from across the galaxy, allowing them to fund medical treatments for Pryor and other victims, as well as to develop educational programs and resources for schools and communities. Will and Pryor found themselves juggling countless responsibilities, from managing the day-to-day operations of the organization to speaking at conferences and events. It was exhausting, but they were fueled by a deep sense of purpose and a determination to make a difference. One evening, As they reviewed the latest batch of messages from supporters, Pryor looked up with a thoughtful expression. "You know, Will, we should host a summit. Bring together representatives from different species to share their experiences and discuss ways to promote unity and understanding." Will nodded, his eyes lighting up with excitement. "That's a fantastic idea, Pryor. We could invite educators, activists, and leaders from across the galaxy. It would be a great way to foster dialogue and collaboration." They set to work planning the Galactic Unity Summit, reaching out to potential speakers and participants, and coordinating logistics. The response was overwhelmingly positive, with individuals and organizations from all corners of the galaxy eager to be a part of this groundbreaking event. As the summit approached, Will and Pryor felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. They knew this was their chance to make a real impact, to show the galaxy what was possible when people came together in the spirit of understanding and cooperation. The Galactic Unity Summit. The day of the Galactic Unity Summit arrived, and the Grand Hall of the Arcturian capital was abuzz with activity. Delegates from countless species filled the room, their colorful attire and diverse appearances a testament to the rich tapestry of the galactic community. Will and Pryor stood at the front of the hall, their hearts pounding with anticipation. The opening ceremony began with a powerful speech from Ethan, who had been chosen as the master of ceremonies. He spoke eloquently about the importance of unity and the need to stand against bullying and discrimination. His words resonated deeply with the audience, setting the tone for the rest of the summit. Throughout the day, panels and workshops covered a wide range of topics, from effective anti-bullying strategies to fostering interspecies understanding in educational settings. Delegates shared their experiences and insights, engaging in lively discussions and forging new connections. One of the most impactful moments came when Varu took the stage to share his personal story. His voice trembled with emotion as he recounted the pain of being bullied and the transformative power of finding support and solidarity through galactic unity. The audience was moved to tears, and a standing ovation followed his speech. Will and Pryor also had their moments in the spotlight, speaking passionately about their journey and the mission of galactic unity. They emphasized the importance of empathy and the need for systemic change to create a more inclusive and compassionate galaxy. As the summit drew to a close, Will looked out at the sea of faces and felt a profound sense of hope. They had come so far, and yet their journey was just beginning. The summit had laid the groundwork for a new era of collaboration and understanding, and he was determined to see it through. In the weeks and months that followed, the momentum from the summit continued to grow. Galactic Unity expanded its reach, establishing chapters on planets and space stations across the galaxy. They developed educational programs, support groups, and advocacy campaigns, working tirelessly to create a safer and more inclusive environment for all beings. Will and Pryor remained at the heart of the movement, their bond of friendship and shared purpose unshakable. They knew there would always be challenges and setbacks, but they faced the future with unwavering resolve. Together, they had sparked a movement that would change the galaxy. They had shown that even in the face of adversity, there was strength in unity, and that by standing together, they could create a brighter, more compassionate future for all. The stars shone brightly overhead as Will and Pryor stood on the balcony of the Galactic Unity headquarters, looking out at the bustling city below. They felt a sense of accomplishment and pride, knowing they had made a difference. But more importantly, they felt a deep and abiding hope for the future. "Here's to the journey ahead," Will said, raising an imaginary glass. "Together, we can achieve anything." Pryor nodded, his eyes shining with determination. To galactic unity and to a better tomorrow. And as they stood side by side, the stars above seemed to echo their vow, a celestial promise of the incredible things still to come.